All right. I think audio should be balanced here, and hopefully I have everything installed correctly because I don't use a lot of the plugins I used to use. Okay. Hi everyone. Hi Nick. I see you in chat. So I thought I'd just go over a bunch of the older ones because I was originally thinking about doing this in video form, but I realized I really don't want to edit it. So I figured I would live stream and then maybe edit down the VOD, which will make it easier than actually trying to like write a script and stuff. Hopefully. Um, and I just figure I'll probably start with. I'm going to start with the Legion theme just because I think it's really linear, and I'll move through a lot of the older, more popular tracks. But I do have all of the project files. If there's anything, like anything on my channel that people are particularly interested in, I think I collected up all of them and made sure everything was installed. So I guess I should probably. Okay, I think that's probably balanced. I don't know. I hope those are roughly the same volume, like mic and music. I'm not entirely sure because while the peak can be the same, it doesn't necessarily mean that they actually sound the same. But I guess to start with this one, it's actually like a really, really, I guess, linear track. It's basically an ostinato and then chords under it. Like there isn't all that much happening. Let me just, I haven't actually looked through all of these. I just remember roughly how they were. So let me go through each layer. So percussion, brass. All right, so there's strings, lead strings, and then sort of. Oh wait, no, these shouldn't be on. I replaced an older string plugin, so there's just like a lead string layer, and then a bigger bass layer, and then a choir. So I guess to just go over each element like harmonically, um, if I remember correctly, the way this track is laid out is basically a melody layer, um, an ostinato, and then just chords. Um, Sorry if I speak really quickly. By the way, I am. It's just the way I am, I guess. Um, so I guess I'll go through each of these layers and how I wrote them. But again, this is realistically a really um, simple track. So to start with just these strings, I think this is pretty typical ostinato. It's just the root three notes of the scale. Not root three, the root and the two above it, the one, two, and three of the scale. Um, and just a repeating pattern for the entire track until it moves. There is a modulation later, but that's really all it does, is repeat an ostinato, which is pretty typical of like action music, trailer music, things like that. Um, and I guess that's really all I have to say about that. It's an ostinato. A lot of my earlier tracks used this sort of repeated form where you just have like one ostinato playing through a bunch of the track. I think it's easier to make things that sound good that way, I guess, because I'm not thinking about like counterpoint or anything. It's just this will play with other stuff under it. And then the next three layers are actually roughly playing the same thing, just different parts of it. Uh, so these strings are playing 1 7 6 4, which is I think like again a pretty typical just generic like action or whatever progression. It's almost something that I use a lot in these older tracks is the I guess I think it's called the Andalusian cadence, where I'm not actually using it as a cadence, where typically that would be 1 7 6 5, and then back to one, where you do it to like end a track. Like, oh, that's not going to work. I need a piano or something. So you'd go like. When's the next track coming? I don't know. I mean, this one should be pretty short. This is probably like only a couple minutes to go through. There's just a few layers. I mean, a lot of these will actually be fairly fast. Like the first, I think, 3 or 4 tracks I released were pretty simple. Um, but a lot of sorry. So what I was saying is, so the Andalusian cadence, it would be used to, I mean, cadence like a movement or something. But you can also just use the chords from it as a progression. So typically you'd have them voiced differently. At least I normally voice them differently. But you can just repeat 1 7 6 5 1 7 6 5. Right. It's like a fairly simple, like just tonic dominant progression. And I use something similar to that here, just with a 4 instead, which I think sounds a little bit. Uh, I mean, it's then still in natural minor, so it sounds more, I guess, actiony. I think of harmonic minor as being more dramatic. Um, and then I think, yeah, and at the end there's a modulation, which I'll go over in a second. But for the most part, that's really what this is. And then the same thing, I think the choir is presumably just doing the same thing. It's just a different layer. Yeah. And then the bass is playing the root notes. Though, huh? Is that the modulation? Yeah, that is. Okay. Um, then I guess really the only other element besides the ostinato and chords is the. I mean, there's percussion, which is I think yeah. I mean, it's the same loop the whole way through, and it's a I don't know how to. It's this cinematic drum pattern that I've heard a lot and then started using a bunch. Where I think the easiest way to think about it is to break the bars up into like 16 divisions, however you want. I mean, presumably 16th notes, but however you want to divide it up. And you're doing like a heavy strike every 3, and then you just do it quickly on the last 2 to make it reset. This is the same percussive pattern as the Archmage theme. I think it also shows up in the Mech Warrior one. It definitely shows up in the Pilot one. Uh, and it's just a pretty common, like, uh, almost polyrhythmic because of the sort of beats on dotted quarter notes, but um, yes, I don't know. It is a drum pattern you will probably hear in other things a lot, and that just repeats for the entire track, except for at the end when it, I guess, ends. But like, yeah. Um, and then the only other element is this lead, which is it's just a brass patch. Oop, that's not the right one. It's just a brass patch, 2 notes for the most part, where or I guess 3 notes because of the lead in, but um, it is also. I mean, it's I wouldn't call it like an ostinato in the same way as the strings, but it's also just like a largely repeated melodic phrase, um, with the only main like important change being on the 4th repetition it goes down to reset, but like as just sort of a way to structure melodic stuff, a pretty easy way, like as a melodic form, AAAB is a pretty common thing to do. Um, Again, there's not that much to say because this track is, at the end of the day, really, really simple. The one other thing is there is a modulation in the middle, which goes, I think, just go up to the 5th. or no, it goes from A to D, and I need to look quickly and see what chords would be to do that. Oh, okay. Um, and like, oh, see, for me, it's like 6 p.m. It's not really that late, but I'm in central US, so. Um, okay, so the way this modulation works, which is I guess really the only like semi-complicated part of this track, is this progression. Instead of going to the six, I instead go to the five, which is E in this case, and then back to the one, but in first inversion, so it's 5 to 1, and then the one becomes major, and I use it as the five to transition into D. Thank you, Joshua Clemens. Yeah, a lot of people have enjoyed the tracks, which I guess I appreciate. It's nice to see that people liked them. But this modulation is something that I shows up in a bunch of my older tracks as well, where I specifically you like use a five to go into the one of the scale you're in, and then use the one of the scale you're in as the five of another scale by making it major. So you can just sort of move around the circle of fifths that way. So like uh, E to A to D to G, that type of thing. So here it's A to D, and then it's just the track basically repeats just in a different key. And then there is the one later melodic line, which I believe has the same progression under it. Yes. But it's, I mean, pretty much all of these older melodic lines are just written by ear. I mean, a lot of more recent stuff is written by ear as well, melodically. But I don't really have that much of an explanation for it other than like it's roughly following the thirds of chords. Um, because um, I guess those just the thirds of chords tend to be that sort of like I guess emotional note in the melody. And I think that's really all I have to say about this one, um, because it is basically just sort of trailer music. I'm going to open the accordion one, which is also, I think, only like 4 or 5 instruments. Um, oh, and I have to change the text now. I did think about doing like a Spooky Month EP in the middle of May or something, because I thought it would be like funny since it's not October. But I think I'll just wait and try to do a larger one. Um, like I might actually do a full album this year since I've accelerated between the first 2 years from like a track to an EP. I just have to plan ahead and actually start working on it more than a week before I'd have to finish it this time. All right. Um, I think I have to turn off the limiter on all of these so that they're not super loud. That's still very loud. Awesome. All right. Uh, so this one has, I guess, two halves to it. There's the sort of horror opening thing, and then the actual main track. I believe the horror opening part is mostly just like ambient layers, and then I think like a tremolo strings patch, which just moves from sort of building up a one chord and then into a 5/7 chord, which another thing that I think like a lot of my I know the Archmage track also has an opening like that. I think a lot of my older tracks use just 5/7s to like transition into the main track. Um, and that's really the entire opening. Like these ambient layers are all let's see which instrument is this? I think they're going to be like a lot of Mysteria or Thrill. Thrill and Mysteria do similar things. Which is just like a sort of ambient horror plugin by Native Instruments. Um, is there anything else? Which one is this? Oh, Kinetic Metal maybe? Oh, Ethereal Earth. Okay, so it's another just like ambient plugin. Uh, and then some effects. Oh, this is like the heartbeat. It's just it's a heartbeat sample that's been like cut up so it speeds up. Um, and that really is the entire opening. And then the actual track. Um, this is just like it's like a one alternated between the one and the five under it. And then I think a five. Yeah. So this is a pretty. I don't know if it's actually that common, but it's something I associate hearing with a lot of like folk music. Is alternating between a one chord and a five chord, and then within those chords you alternate the root note between the like first and the fifth or the first and the third of the chord, which creates this sort of. I guess I don't really know how to describe it, but it's yeah. I've used this in other tracks as well. I know, like at least recently, the Archmage 2 track, the like sea shanty, not really sea shanty, but like sea folk music section uses the same or the similar type of progression. If I remember correctly, too, this isn't actually it's a harmonium because the I didn't have like a good accordion sample, and the harmonium had a little bit more attack, which made it sound slightly better. They sound very, very similar when you have sort of an old, not great, like MIDI instrument of them. And think I think the harmony basically alternates on this and then just modulates up occasionally. Yeah, because this is the same thing but up. And then how does this modulation? This is probably the same modulation as the others. Um, wait. Oh, it's actually not. That's interesting. Um, so I guess with this modulation, it's. I mean, it is 5/1 because it started in A. So this is an E major chord, and then it goes to A, but then I guess it just goes to the 7 of the scale as the 5/7 of a different scale, so it goes from 1 to 7. Um, but then this is a G7 chord, so that modulates up to C. Which I honestly thought that this was because that was like the modulation that I did in most of my tracks was the like 5/1 as the 5 of another scale, like I did in the Legion one, but I guess this is different. And I think it just repeats, it just goes up. Um, it doesn't really change. This section looks slightly different. Ooh. Oh, it's just more spread out. Oh, wait, no, it's not. That's interesting. Okay. I actually did. Okay, I didn't remember this track as well as I thought I did. I must have changed the progression here. I did. Okay. So here. Oh no, this isn't D sharp. I guess that means, okay, so this would be 1 to what, 4 to 5? And then is this, sorry, I have to like think through this for a second. Okay, so then this isn't a modulation, it's just a different, okay. Yeah, so this is 1 to 4 to 5, which is also a pretty common, I guess, maybe not common, something I associate with folk music. Again, it's something that I used, again, in the Tube Archmage too for the folksier sounding stuff. Particularly like alternating between 1 and 5 and then doing like 4, 3, something like that afterwards in a different section. It sounds sort of like Eastern Bloc folk, maybe. Um, but then here it changes again. So this is what? Interesting. Okay. Because like I don't think this shouldn't be entirely like I don't think this is entirely diatonic, is it? Because if it's in this was in D sharp. Yeah, so 1, 4, 5. And then oh, maybe that is wait. No, because then the F sorry. I'm actually like confusing myself now. I'm like I'm not particularly literate, I guess, musically literate. And so when it comes to like scales that I don't write in a lot, I actually like have to think about them. So like if I okay, let me just move this down into D. Okay, that makes way more sense. All right. Um yeah, so 1, 5. Oh, okay. So then, yeah, it's a 5 over the 5. And then to 1. No, it is diatonic. It's just this one's weird because it's I guess it's like the diminished it, it's the top of a 5/7 chord without the root here. So it's like a diminished 7 that you get from switching into harmonic minor. Um but I mean realistically this is still doing a similar, right? This is like tonic, dominant, dominant, tonic. So it's still just moving between the tonic and dominant functions of the scale. Um, and then, oh, this is what I was talking about just like a moment ago with the 4/3. I do this a lot in a ton of even my more recent music. I've like moved away from a lot of some of the things that'll show up in these tracks, but this like 4/3 thing you'll still hear in a lot of my tracks. Um, and then it switches back to that like diminished kind of sound. And then apparently it ends on a tonic, which is interesting. Because I thought, didn't it? Hold up. Oh, okay. Normally, a lot of this. Sorry, I'm just responding to chat. Like a lot of this music, like basic music theory stuff, you can probably find in like a couple tutorials online. Like I know, I think Andrew Huang has like a overview of the basics of music theory. It's like 30 minutes long or something. Um, and a lot of those videos are actually pretty good overviews for learning a lot of this stuff. And like, granted, it does help to be able to like take courses. Um, but you can really learn a lot of stuff with a couple short videos online. Um, anyway, so what I was confused about is typically a lot of these older tracks I will like build up to a five at the very end, and then have a strong like tonic resolution in the next bar. Um, but here it looks like I switch back and I have this like the last three beats are all in the tonic. It's sort of a, I guess, classical sounding resolution. And that's like, I think that is really all of the harmony because the later there are these like brass parts underneath it, um, which are outlining the same chords, just with sort of this it's not quite like a syncopated rhythm really, but a different rhythm than the main accordion. Um, but they are literally just outlining the notes from the chords. Um, until this, I guess, odd written entirely by ear bit. Um, and then I guess, I mean, the violin's going to be one thing. There's, oh, the percussion is just like four on the floor, kicks and claps, or stomps and claps, I guess. Um, or I guess not four on the floor. It's alternating. If you consider them together, it's just once every beat. Um, and then yeah, the last thing in this track and like the main thing is the violin, um, which I think. Let me open this up. Okay, yeah. So I think this first part was an A, right? I think. Yeah. Um, and this violin is sticking. I think when I was writing this, I was looking at the sound of a couple different folk traditions, which were. It's not very cohesive, I guess. This is not very representative of an actual, like, specific folk tradition. But like when listening through like different Eastern Bloc stuff, things like written in the klezmer scale and things like that, um, it looked like a lot of melodies were A with folk stuff in general because it was often sung stuck in like a pretty small range because like the average person doesn't have a big vocal range, which this doesn't really stick to, but these little bits by themselves, like if you look at this section, it's going to stick between like three notes. Um, and then B, that sort of sound, if you want something to just read as that like sort of folkish sound, um, is there's a lot of like half steps, and then the diminished five is here, which gives it that sort of quality, and that's something that I've still written into a lot of music. Um, but like if you just those notes, if you just play those, it's going to, I guess, evoke that feeling or that mood. And then the actual structure of the melody, I think these are like basically entirely repeated. I mean, not quite, but yeah, it's a roughly repeated section between the two different like half step intervals that are diatonic to the scale. Because again, that sort of half step tense sound is going to evoke that. But at the end of the day, like this is written largely by ear. A lot of these older things are, um, because I didn't have that much of like a theoretical basis. Any tips for practicing music theory? Um, I mean, there are a lot of different types of music theory that you can practice. I think, like, once you have a little bit of knowledge, the thing that I've done a lot of is just like improvising on piano, and that forces you to uh, try to think about like what you're doing. Um, and then I mean, it allows you to sort of apply the concepts, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think mostly just writing music, you're going to get more used to things over time, and there are a lot of different like types of music theory that you can look at things through the lens of. Like you could learn, like most classes in school will be based on like classical stuff, right? It's like common practice era, but there are a number of different classical traditions around the world. Jazz music theory, which is, I mean, there's a lot of like terminology and things that are derived from like classical music theory, but there's a whole bunch of different things that you can learn. And I think really just like using it, you'll get more used to it over time. Um, I don't know how much you can really practice. Good night, Mitigaria. I don't. I guess yeah. I don't know how much more I can really say about this about the question about music theory or about this track, because this really does come down to a lot of like 1/5 progressions and then these modulations, and it repeats. It just goes up. That's the entire way the track works. I don't think there's anything. Most of these older tracks have almost nothing going on in processing. What is 9? Oh, I think that's the heartbeat. Maybe no, heartbeat's 15. Oh, that's the stomp. I see. The stomp has a little bit of distortion on it. That's all of the processing for the entire track. Um, Let me open the Archmage theme. I know I don't actually know what's up next because those are the three like main tracks from my old catalog. It's like the most popular ones. Uh, so I guess I'll just figure out what's next after going over this one. Oh, it's going to take a second to load. Awesome. Oh, there we go. Okay. So this one is also, I mean, like the first one, this one is largely it's an ostinato and chords, just repeated on different instruments, and then there's like one or two other melodic lines. Um, like I can go over all the sections, but that's going to be most of the description. Um, the opening is again, it's like a 1 to a 5/7 thing, I think, right? Yeah, it's one walk down, and then that brass just builds a 5/7 chord to sort of transition into the track, because it sounds big and dramatic. Um, and then the actual main track, this one ostinato, which is in that sort of AAAB, like mostly repetitious, but with the one variation at the end, setup, repeats for like this entire first bit. It gets other instruments added on top. Um, so there's strings, and then later there's another section that has like a sort of fake electric guitar on top as well. But yeah, it's just gonna repeat that, and then oh, there are these couple sections where it goes up, which is just walking up the scale. I think this one's in what, F sharp? Yeah, F sharp harmonic minor. Um, which not very notable, except it makes use of E sharp, which is funny because normally you would just say F. That's fun, I guess. Um, the rhythmic pattern of everything is pretty much the same. So the drums have the same pattern as the ostinato. It's the same pattern as the Legion theme. This was the first thing that I actually like uploaded to YouTube. I guess I had like one channel where I'd put like one or two really old tracks, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But this was like the first thing that I actually put onto YouTube as like a an attempt to have a musical catalog. Um, anyway, sorry. So this has the same rhythmic pattern as the Legion theme, and it's the same between the ostinato and the drums. So it's if you break it up into 16s, you're doing one every three, and then you're just resetting on this last bar by having a faster beat instead of having the three there. Um, and it's again, it's just like almost polyrhythmic thing because if you were just repeating threes, then it would be more, or not almost polyrhythmic. It's like an almost polymetric thing, or like if you kept repeating threes afterwards, it would be sort of like two different rhythms. But since you reset, it's just dotted quarter notes, I guess. I didn't start with the $700 version of FL Studio. Also, I didn't spend $700 on it because it goes on sale for super, super cheap on like Black Friday if you own the earlier versions. I think I originally got the producer edition, and that's all that I owned when I made this. Flappus. Um, Let me just look through here. Yeah, and then the strings follow the same rhythm. Basically, everything does, other than the bass guitar just plays on the downbeat. Um, Downbeat? Yes. Um, and I guess I can look at. I think this mostly just repeats the same progression through the whole thing, and it's a really similar progression to a lot of the other stuff. Yeah, so it's not quite exactly the same. So it's one, and then it has the like raised seven that's in harmonic minor, and then 6 5, um, which is I think the same progression as the mech theme, if I remember correctly. And this repeats for pretty much the entire track. Like I think it's the only like real harmony because there is like the one break that doesn't use it later. Um, oh wow, this MIDI clip is mislabeled. Anyway, yeah, there's this one break later, um, but this progression is just going to repeat for like the entire track, um, which uh, you know is a thing you can do. I don't really anymore, but um, it works. And then the strings on top of it are like outlining the same chords. You're just doing octaves even here, actually. Yeah, I don't even have chords in this first section. It's just the bass notes. And then they repeat the ostinato. So it's really just layered of the same sounds. You could break this down into just the ostinato and the bass line and then the rhythm, um, up until. Oh, it's a bit loud. Let me turn this down. Up until here, where you actually get brass and strings that outline the chords, and then you have the main violin melody. Um, and once it's outlined, there is actually this like I guess kind of weird thing with the chords where since it's going down to the raised seven as the root note, um, this chord is like I guess is sort of abnormal. You don't see it that frequently because I mean typically if you were moving down the scale, you would be in natural minor and you'd have like oh well now it's going to clash because of the other things there, but um, you wouldn't use the raised seven as the root note typically here. Um, and I don't really know what to call this chord exactly. Like maybe if I outlined it, I could describe it as like an inversion of something. But I think the more useful way to think about it is just that you're moving the root note down. Um, and this then just repeats. It's one raised seven, then 6 5, and that's going to repeat like across all of the instruments. I mean, it's just layered. There's not really that much interplay going on. Um, it does look like why are there? Oh, okay, never mind. I understand. Um, And then at the end of each like set of four measures, it moves up from the chord to reset. Um, but it is just going to repeat that progression. Then on top of it, there's the violin line, um, which I did not know how to write when I wrote it. So it's basically just moving down the scale. Um, like I didn't know how to write a violin part, so like it's just starting on the one and like walking down, and you have like these. I mean, you have like little jumps up, but for the most part, it's really just like walking down the harmonic minor scale. Um, and I don't know. I can't describe how to write it because I was written entirely by ear like 2 years ago. Um, but that's really like all that is. Um, so like ostinato over the root notes, and then that line over the chords. And then the next, like the later section, is almost identical. The ostinato is just different. Um, Quick question about FL. How do the extra instruments work? Oh, the other instruments in FL Studio are like VST plugins, which you can use with any DAW. It's just like third-party software that's in a standardized format. Um, so, like Contact is a platform for other instruments, and it's a really popular plugin for loading like acoustic instruments as patches. Ow. Anyway, so this other section is really, really similar. It's just got more things, so it's like louder and more distorted instruments. Um, yeah, no, Contact isn't like exclusive to higher versions because it's just like a plugin format that works with all of them. I mean, it's another thing that you'd have to buy on its own, but like yeah, all the plugins work with any version of FL Studio. You don't really get that much benefit from buying like the higher versions of FL Studio. Like Producer Edition is good enough for 99% of stuff. It's just there's like a couple neat plugins that you get with the higher versions. Um, so this later section, it has the same violin line. It's just got a guitar amp on it. If I can, hear it? Yeah. Oh, it's popping. Awesome. Oh, I'm not going to deal with that for this track. Maybe later if it's still a problem. Um, so this just has, oh, it's mixed in a weird way too. I actually use the mix knob on here. Oh no, it built up. Never mind. It's not mixed in a weird way. Okay. So this is just guitar rig, which I had at the time, to like add distortion to it. Beyond that, I mean, there's not really anything special about it. It's the same line. And the same thing goes for the drums. Oh. The drums are being run through Driver, which is a sort of guitar-ish um, distortion plugin to make them louder here, or not necessarily louder, just sort of a little bit compressed and saturated. Um, and then it's the same sort of brass strings chords, unless, did I remove the strings here? Wait. No, the strings are still playing. Yeah, it's the same brass and strings chords as the previous section. The only like big difference here, other than the distortion, is this ostinato is different. So rather than being the original one, hi root beer pork. Rather than being the original one, it is basically again just like a walk down the harmonic minor scale, which a lot of things are. Um, it's just, I mean, it's focusing on these half step intervals, which typically sound more tense. Um, and that's like really all it is. I mean, the track is a set of chords and like two ostinatos and a violin melody. That's about it. Um, and like with particular like writing stuff, there's really not that much like part writing or specific fancy stuff going on like with the violin or anything because I didn't really know how to like do that at the time. Um, so yeah, there is I guess the break, which was I mean just written by ear. Um, and it's just sort of sitting on the one chord, kind of, sort of implying it. That's it. Pretty sure piano is a percussive instrument. I don't think the drums even change in this track either. Now that I think about it. Oh no, they do. No, oh right, they have. Okay, yeah, the drums change for the break because it's the same thing but quieter. But it's realistically like the same pattern. And then the opening build I use both places, which is just a snare roll. And that's really it. Pretty, I guess, simple track. I have every other project file here, I'm pretty sure. Is there any particular track that people are interested in? I wonder how the delay is. Okay. I think I turned down the delay for this stream. The unnamed one. Oh, cinematic synthy something? Um, Let me go find that. Okay, yeah, that one might take a second to load up. Because that is a using all of my RAM type of track. I don't even know how it might mess with the stream because of the CPU usage. Thank you. I worked very hard to name it. I just kept the temp name when I released it. I kind of like I liked that bit of just sort of keeping whatever name I had named the project file, but I think I have to not do that because it's just not algorithmically viable at all. Okay, there's a whole bunch of instances of like guitar rig and isotope trash in this one, which is part of the reason that it takes so long to load, because each of those takes a second to boot up. Sure, I can do Dockyard Chase after this. Alright. So this one, okay, yeah, I have this one like bounced out because it uses so much CPU, but I can go over the elements individually, like outside of the bounced version. But this is useful to actually. Let me. Where's the? Oh, ozone's the limiter in this one. Um, but these ones are useful so I can actually hear everything together without it crashing my computer. Um, this project file is actually organized too because I had to keep track of everything. Um, I guess I can just go section by section because this one's pretty, I guess, clearly split up into different like bits that I had sort of written together and then tried to staple back to back. Um, right. I don't have any effects on a bunch of these channels either because it was using too much CPU. Um, so that's going to be, oh, the effects. Okay, there we go. So this opening has what? The synth, the piano, and then like a sub. But the sub's just going to be repeating what the piano is, so I'll just go over the other two. And I guess on top of that, ambience. Oh, a lot of the more recent tracks I've done are going to have a ton of these like basically just white noise ambient layers. Not quite white noise, but just miscellaneous ambient sounds, which are really, really good for filling up space. Like if you're doing any type of like cinematic production or just sort of ambient, whatever type of less traditional music, using just sort of noises to fill up space is going to be really nice because you don't have necessarily like a full mix all the time. Um, but let me just go over each of these. So the synth here, I think it, I mean, it is an ostinato again, but it has a descending bass line that's going to match the piano. That starts here, um, where it just sort of moves down these chromatic notes. And this is one of those things where it's going to be written like largely by ear until I reach this part where I have to actually, I guess, like cadence, I would call it, where I have to like sort of transition, have like a musical punctuation, where then I would sort of revert back to using like whatever sort of baseline theoretical knowledge in order to typically move like to a 5 chord or something in order to set up a resolution. But this first section is just this repeated set of notes within the descending bass line, which is fun. I think chromatic or semi-chromatic like bass lines are pretty interesting sounding. And the where's the and the piano just sort of mirrors these chords. Um, so it has those top 2 notes and then has the descending bit in the middle until you get to this 5/7 chord. As per usual, good way to sort of set up a resolution. Oh, this one's also weird though because it's over the oh, it's an E, so it's over the third to make it, I guess, more tense. Um, but yeah, it's really what it is. Was like written by ear. I just had the chromatic bass line and built around it, which was just sort of an interesting sound. And then the synth, I guess with this track, there's actually a whole bunch of sound design happening. This piano, I think, is really, oh wait, no, that's ambient brass. It has a lot of effects on it. Where's the piano? This okay, so the piano's not really being processed at all. I think it's like an unicorda. No, it's the Noir patch from Native Instruments, which is sort of a very intimate sounding piano. Um, Almonds are part of the rose family. I didn't realize they were part of the rose family. I know they're like floral. Well, I guess they're not floral, but they are. I knew they were like pulled from a plant with flowers. I suppose a lot of things are pulled from plants with flowers, though. Like most seeds are, because like that's where the seeds come from. Anyway, um, but let me go. I think sub. Oh, I like can't even hear the sub on these headphones because I'm not using mixing headphones right now. That's funny. Is the sub there? It is playing. It's just quiet. Um, the sub is, I think, literally basically just a sine wave. Um, Probably. Yeah, it's just a sine wave with a bit of distortion on it, and it just does these bends up into the chords. You're doing music for the? No, I did a little bit of music for Sinfonietta, but I'm not writing any music for games right now. But I did write like the title track and one of the boss tracks for Sinfonietta. So okay, this lead has a whole bunch of effects, but I don't remember what the waveform is, but it's basically like probably just yeah, it's like a filtered sort of saw-ish um, thing, and then it's just being like distorted, and then it has like reverb on it, which is what all of these add up to. I mean, it's being compressed too, um, but oh, let's see. I guess the guitar rigs are probably having the biggest effect. I think they're like saturation and reverb. Oh, guitar rig takes a long time to load. Um, Guitar rig 6 Thank you, Ben. Guitar Rig 6 has a whole bunch of like ambient sort of presets in it. Oh yeah, Sausage Fattener. That's a classic. But it has a whole bunch of like ambient presets that I liked using for just sort of like miscellaneous sound design things because rather than just having a reverb, a lot of them have like other, echoes or not echoes, but like delays. This one has tape echo on it, which is a delay plugin, or other like choruses and things that just, I guess, add a lot of ambience and character to things. And there's a couple of those on here. So, I mean, it's realistically, it's basically like a saw wave with a filter and reverb and distortion. But like with a little bit more character because of all those small things that I've changed. And this next, oh, okay. um, Sort of pulls the ambient sounds to the forefront, and then it just has we're at piano notes. Yeah, it just has these like it's just this half step up. It's like it's technically, I guess, like the Phrygian mode, but I mean, it's not like I'm writing in the Phrygian mode. I think of this as just like the Doom sounds, where you just use the root note and then the half step above and below it, and it's just sort of a way to move through. Like it doesn't really build tension or resolve anywhere. Or I guess it does build tension, but it doesn't really like resolve or point specifically anywhere. It's just a way to sort of have a largely one note section with a little bit of movement. And then I think, yeah, I mean, these drums are just going to be doing sort of a fast, I guess what I'd call like a sort of pitter patter type of thing, where they're just sort of filling in most of the 16th notes. Then the main thing, like the main big section as the next part of this track, is this build. Oh, apparently I have most of the effects on this right now. Interesting. I thought I'd turn these off. And so this whole bit is, I mean, it's largely, I mean, it's a single note riff, but it's got like the two different guitars, which are playing the same thing, and I think they're just being distorted differently. At the time, I didn't have guitar plugins outside of, I think this is Electric Sunburst, which is another like Native Instruments sort of default one you get with Complete. If I can find it. What color did I make guitars? Yellow? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's Electric Sunburst. And so I just used the like neck and bridge pickups for the different sides because I didn't have a second guitar plugin to fill in the other side. And they're just being distorted differently. But the like more, I think, complicated sound design element on the guitar is the like bass pluck under it, which is this sound with a bunch of effects. If I look for the bass pluck, the way that it's being routed is like it's from a input, and then the sub goes through like by itself, but then it has a couple distorted layers on top of it with like different iterations of isotope trash, which means that you have sort of like the stronger, fundamental that you get from the sub going through, but you can have a bunch of different noise layers on top. And then, I mean, really, it's just I guess, a monophonic riff where it's just layered with the two guitars. And within that section, Oh, I guess there's a bass guitar layer too. That doesn't really matter though. It's not actually adding that much. It's just like a little bit of harmonic content. But within this bit, there aren't really. I mean, there are drums, but the drums are these sort of lighter top hits, like hi hats, and then these orchestral like hi hits. Um, the actual like main sort of rhythmic instrument is the punch of the bass pluck. Um, so it's sort of acting as like a kick um, as well. And then this next section is like entirely different, and I mean it consists mostly. It's the opening synth, strings, and a bass guitar. I think for the most part. I mean there are other filler elements. Thank you, Noah Giesler's artist. Um, oh, I don't think I have all the elements saved here, do I? Yeah, I don't. I don't have the bass guitar on Frozen, so I'm gonna open up one of these. Um, I'll have to look at the chords here quickly. I mean, largely this type of like this whole section in this type of music, which is something that I've included in a number of tracks. I don't know if I actually released that many of them, but this is something that I like doing, where basically you just have this sort of rhythmic chug of something. Here it's like a bass guitar. You can do it with like low strings. Um, and then you just sort of build elements on top of it, but you have like a rhythmic chug of a bass or something, some drums, and that's like outlining root notes, and then you just build on top of that. And it's a really easy way to make sort of a big rising section. Um, so in this case, uh, I have, let's see. I mean, okay, yeah, there's drums again, but they're largely light. I think the whole way through. Oh no, here, okay. Here's a little bit of a heavier drum thing, but really the bass is doing most of that work. But then on top of that, um, where are the strings? I labeled everything. I'm just not reading my labels. There they are. I have these plugins from the the Cremona string quartet from Native Instruments, where they have this nice set of solo strings, um, and they're each playing, I guess, like spiccato, or I think it's technically like a staccatissimo patch. Um, and let me just make sure. I think this first part's just basically outlining chords. Yeah. Okay. Um, so this is like just root notes. I think this is like paired or like layered with the bass. Let me see, like E G D sharp. Presumably that's just layered with the bass, because it's a cello. Yeah. Um, is this layered too? Actually, it might be. The way these are mixed and the way that I tend to mix strings is I'll do like two different strings playing like spiccato or something, and I'll pan them hard left, hard right, to sort of fill out the space. Yeah, it's the same notes. So these are all just layered on the bass, and then the violin is playing the same thing as the like arpeggio, the like ambient bass arp thing. Um, so I guess realistically, how do you choose note velocity? The note velocity for like a synth or something, it doesn't matter. For a lot of other instruments, I mean, it's really based on the dynamics of a section. I'm better about it now. Like a lot of my older stuff, it was just whatever. Um, with something like this, if you look at I guess like the violin, um, there's going to be like a sort of crescendo, and then these sections are kind of emulating a ricochet. I could have actually used like a ricochet plugin. It's just like a spiccato note where it's getting quieter after each main hit. So it's to create a sort of pumping motion where you have strong and then weaker hits. Um, and then So I guess, oh yeah. So the way I wanted to explain this section harmonically is it's not really outlining chords, but it's something you'll hear in a lot of like cinematic action music, and something that I do pretty frequently, where you have like an arpeggio or something on top, and then you put just root notes under it, which then recontextualize the arpeggio. Yeah, it's part of the chug. It's sort of you want a bunch of elements that are having like different strong and weak rhythmic beats. You get a sort of a forward motion. And it also just makes it sound a little bit more realistic and organic because you don't want everything to be like, I guess, full volume. It'll sound very static. Um, but you hear like there's like a strong hit at the beginning of each thing. You can feel the different instruments have like different strong hits, but they're all sort of lined up on this grid. Um, wow, somebody's slamming something on the floor above me. Awesome. Um, oh, right. Okay. Um, I don't have the effects on these channels. Hold up. So these have the violin and cello have. It's called Portal. It's a plugin by Output, I think. What I have. Okay, I have to log into Splice. Just a second. Awesome. Uh, Forgot that Splice unlogs you all the time. Okay, there we go. So these have Portal, which is it's a sort of delay and delay distortion stuff. Um, Plugin, and what I'm doing here with the violin or the viola and cello is I'm using it to give them this a sort of, I guess, like a rhythmic stutter kind of. Here's a They'll have this sort of call because it's doing a reversed bit after each normal bit on this sort of like half note pattern. Um, and then this one's on whole notes, and so you end up with this secondary rhythmic pattern that's sort of building in the background. And I mean, it's not like super noticeable in the main mix, like with or without them on, it's not going to make that much of a difference, but it just adds a little bit of, I guess, like ear candy almost. Um, and then the bit after that is where there's actually like chords here now. Because we're outlining a different sort of melodic pattern on top of the same root notes, I think. Yeah. Oh, and then there'll be another change. This was actually, I think, the thing that this reminds me the most of, like this sort of pattern, is actually the like the Crisis 2 soundtrack, where it has these like linear, I guess, 16th note, eighth note, eighth note patterns in the melody. They just sort of repeat over notes to like outline chords, basically. Um, and I don't actually remember what these are outlining. I'd have to like look. Let's see. So the bass, I mean, that's just going to be like on the root. Oh no. Can't see everything together, so I don't actually remember what it's playing. I mean, I can tell you for a fact that this is just the root. And then what, the root over, oh, the root in the fifth. So it's just outlining like a, oh. Sorry, I'm just I'm reading chat. It's hard. It's hard to like look across the monitors and read chat and work on things. I don't understand how streamers do this, where they'll like just glance at chat and like pull a bunch of information. I don't get it. Um, anyway, I honestly I don't really want to just outline all the chords. If you really wanted to, you could like listen through and figure it out. Because I'd have to move everything into a single pattern to be able to tell what all notes are playing at once. But roughly what's happening is the different elements are sort of kind of hinting at chords, though it is. I don't know how to describe this in like musical terms. I don't have the terminology for this, but a lot of um, a lot of music stuff that I've written will have pretty like repetitious elements on top and then like the root notes underneath, which is what I was talking about with like the opening part. Um, and I don't know how you describe what that is because it's not, I don't think, particularly helpful to think about it entirely in terms of, oh, these are the chords that are playing. Like it's more useful to think about it in terms of each line and how they interact. It's like, oh, this like line for the bass to play is like moving, in the case of like the opening of this track, like just down the scale or down, I guess that was a chromatic one. Where like actually thinking of each chord becomes less useful. It's easier to think of it in terms of like voice leading, I guess. Um, but like, yeah, I don't know. I can't really explain how to write this because I don't have the terminology to describe it. But that's kind of what's happening. I would think of each line as like a more of an individual thing, and then you don't want them to clash. But the voice leading becomes much more important than like I guess you'd call it like functional harmony. And obviously a lot of it's going to be following roughly functional harmony anyway. But like the important thing is much more so you think about like what the voices are doing. Um, So like each sort of thing should sound kind of melodic, which I guess is like sort of like counterpoint, but it's not really a counterpoint. But if you listen to like any line, it's like its own thing. I don't know. Anyway, but basically what this section does, on the whole, is that it's just building, right? It's getting louder, adding sections. This was a fun little bit where this synth gets like arpeggiated. Wait, not here. Here it is. So the notes are really spread out, so you get that sort of. I mean, a lot of like retro synthy stuff would use like an actual arpeggiator to spread the notes out over a couple octaves. But it doesn't really change much about the harmony. I mean, it's still just playing like one note at a time. They're just spread out over 4 octaves. Um, I guess yeah. There's not that much to say about this section other than that. I mean, it builds, it does its job. Um, oh, then there's a lick. I think at the end, yeah. As with many things, at the end I sort of do this very, I guess, classically influenced like walk down. Um, into that lick, um, which then tails into the next section. And in order to get that like reverb reverse sound, you can like put reverb on something and use automation to make the reverb get louder like after the sound ends, or you can just export it and reverse it. I think that's easier. Well, not necessarily. For a lot of things, that's easier. Especially if you need a really long tail, because the actual reverb decays. Um, ooh, there's a weird resonance going on up there. What's causing that? Oh, it's not. Oh, it's because it's playing two at once. No, what? What is doing that? Oh, it's this. It's just part of this sound. Wait, where is this sound being routed to? Here? Where is... It's hard when your mixer's on your screen. I normally have it on the other monitor. Oh, this isn't on. Oh, that's why. The effects aren't on, so that's not being cut out like it was in the final mix. There's just like a weird resonance at like, I don't know, 15K or something up at the top of this sound. You can see it on the meter up there. Anyway, I mean, this is just a transition. I use a lot of these sort of short builds and tracks. You don't want to put sections back to back often if you can avoid it because things tend to sound rushed. So it's good to give your track a little bit of breathing room. So if you can leave a couple bars to transition between sections, that's a good idea most of the time. This is, I think, yeah, it's just like a bass pitching up. Each layer on its own. These are just like saw waves with distortion, presumably. Yeah, pretty standard for really everything. Saw waves are really common because they're very harmonically rich. Ooh, something weird is happening in the background there. Oh, it's because the guitar is not on. That's why. Anyway, I'm going to go back to the bounce version just so I don't have to turn everything on and kill my CPU. This section is, I think, basically the same as the last one. It's just sort of that pumping rhythmic thing. I mean, it's obviously a lot less elements. It's just the bass guitar. But it's really just playing the one note. It's a transition. And then this is just the original riff, like from the beginning, copy and pasted with drums under it. And the drums are just following the rhythm of the bass. I mean, it's the same thing. And then another identical transition. I was getting like lazy by the time I was writing the end of this track because I had worked on it for so long. And so it's another basically just pitch up. I mean, that's how those transitions work. Because these are, I think they're technically modulating keys, if I remember correctly. Like the pitch up ends in a new scale, and I stick with that scale. But it is, I mean, it's just a bass pitching up with drums. And then there's another bass riff with using the same bass. It's just a different. Oh, it's somewhere in here. Oh. Without effects, it's the same weird sound without effects. Where is bass pluck? These sounds without effects are kind of flat. It's basically like a sine wave with compression. Oh, the tempo changes. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. There are a couple tempo changes. Actually, that is part of the reason the track was so hard to run on CPU, because if I have everything like unfrozen here, if I'm actually doing all of the processing real time, the tempo change like kills everything, because calculating reverb apparently is like really, really rough with tempo changes because it just kills your CPU. Like that. Just doesn't work. Oh, I was going to talk about, yeah. So this the next section is like another similar bass riff, but this one is, I think it's just like an ascending up the scale, or no, it's a chromatic ascendant. Okay. I mean, this is the equivalent of just doing another pitch up thing, but instead of like actually pitching up the instrument, it's just moving up the one note at a time, like moving up the chromatic, moving up chromatically one note at a time. And at the end it goes back down to sort of imply a motion back to the beginning. But it's, I mean, realistically, the equivalent would be to like writing a bass note and just pitching it up as it goes up. There's not, I guess, that much harmony going on. Oh, because the tempo change, everything gets offset. So frustrating. Okay, let me move. Okay, after the tempo change, here we go. Nope, it's still offset. That's so frustrating. Okay, there we go. It's here. Here is what I was looking for. Wait, no, dude. Okay, I'm gonna turn off the tempo changes so I can actually find where I am in the track. Okay, there. So annoying. Other than that, this section, I mean, it's the ascending bass and then strings that are matching it. Like it's all, I mean, it's monophonic. It's just one sound. Then just ambience underneath. That's really it. I forgot to mention. I mean, there's a ton of effects under this whole thing, but it's really just impacts, risers. That's what a lot of music is going to come down to, effects wise, as crashes, impacts, risers. Same thing applies here. Um, okay, and then after that is the final riff. This is another like modulation that's just like a pitch bend where it's not actually like a harmonic modulation. I'm not going, oh, I'm going to use whatever harmony to move keys. It's just pitching down into a different key, um, which is easier to do. And then I think this is the same bass again. I use this bass a lot because I really liked it. I need to turn on the effects. It's clipping. Actually, I don't know if I do need to turn on the effects because it's going to kill my CPU if I do. I'll just keep playing the rendered version. I have a bounced version of the bass block. I don't at this part. But it is just the same sound. Like it's the same instrument. Oh no. Okay. I can look at this riff. I think it just has guitar hits at the beginning. The opera bit at the end. Oh yeah, I can get to that choir. That's a specific library. It's called Silka, I think, if I remember correctly. I can look when I get there. Um, this riff. Can I look at? I need one with all of the notes. Here. That doesn't have all the notes. This has all the notes. Uh-oh. It doesn't want to play. Why? Why is it so quiet? That's weird. Oh, you know what? It's being high passed. It doesn't have any of the distortion on it, so it's really quiet. I don't know if I'll ever actually remake Tuba Archmage boss theme because I figure like I mean it exists. I mean the project file is out there if anyone ever wanted to like make a remix of it. Um, and like I did make it's not a remake. I did make the like April Fool's one that has a lot of components. I mean, it uses the original motif. It's just not the same track. But I don't know if I'm ever actually going to want to remake it because I figure I'd rather like write something new if I was going to do that. And partly it's also just hard to work with my older tracks because they're written weirdly. I don't like they're written with basically a bunch of layers of like the same things. Uh, right. This riff is harmonically. I mean, it's. I think it's. Yeah, it's writing these sort of doom esque riffs. I don't know how to explain harmonically. It's just moving between the notes that sound tense in the scale. So it's like the root, the flat two, the sharp seven, the like the minor third, and the flat five, largely at just different rhythms. Like that's all that they are. Um, yeah, no problem. KN 2187. Um, I have no idea how to explain writing these sort of guitar riffs though, because it is just moving between those notes. The one thing that's funny about this one, I think, is it's in like 9/8. It has like an extra note in it basically because the reset is here after the 8, so it's 9/8. Um, so yeah, that's about all that I can say about the riff. I don't know. I tried. Um, it moved again. There we go. Were those not? I thought I turned those off. Anyway, um, And then it's just the same thing repeated with guitar. Like nothing really changes here. So just, I mean, it's a guitar and a bass, but that's about it. The actual next different section is the closing, which I can unmute things for and actually run, I think. Yeah. So, this choir, I scrolled past it, didn't I? There we go. This choir is, yeah, it's Silka, which is a really, really nice choir from 8dio. It's super, super single use though, because it sounds like really nice to do these sort of slow arcs with. But like you can't really do anything else. It's I really love it for this, but it's not a very well-rounded library, I guess. Um, but for this type of thing, it works really well. And it's just these chords outlining, I think, the same thing. How am I doing? Or are you talking to me? I suppose I shouldn't ask that question if it's in chat and it's not directed at somebody else in chat specifically. I'm good. I think it's just outlining the same chords as the opening, basically. Like, yeah, these are just sort of the piano chords, where it's largely the repeated note and then just or the repeated notes and then like the chromatic dissension. So it's a copy of the opening. It just has the choir, the piano, and then, oh, there's a sub. Yeah, it's the same sub as the opening as well. Why is it so? Whatever. Anyway, and then rather than having like the arp, like as in the opening, I wanted it to be slower, so it's just these single notes on top. It's fading out. There we go. That's about it. Like it's the sort of mirror of the opening. It's the same progression. I think that's the entire track, really. It's kind of a lot of completely different sections that I just sort of stapled together because I was working on them. And like if I look in the project info, yeah, this was a 78-hour project because it was just so many like, oh, it doesn't show up on stream. I just realized FL Studio doesn't like displaying the other windows. But it's just like, what program? It's FL Studio 20. Though, I mean, most of the sounds are contact patches. Like that's going to be more relevant, is that contact is the plugin I use for most stuff. But yeah, that's like the whole track. I can look at the Dockyard Chase now. Let me go find that. And it'll probably take a second to open it. It has to load a couple bounced samples. I think the Dockyard Chase music is probably the most professional sounding thing I've made. And I mean, it's like I think a pretty simple track, like harmonically, but just from like a sort of sound perspective. Which is funny because that was like right after I started having funny like tinnitus problems, so I wasn't sure it would like mix well, but it did. So let me turn off the masters so that I can actually play things in real time. I think I need to make sure all the effects are on. I think they are though, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna, I guess, break this into, there's like 3 sections in the first bit and then the second bit and then it repeats. So the opening and then like this bass repeats through the whole thing is, let me find the instrument. Nope, that's not the right, I'm not on the right panel. There we go. What? Wait. Oh, that's There we go. Oh, I bounced the bass out. I forgot. I bounced everything out because I needed it to pitch up cleanly for those sections. So literally everything is bounced out except for like the drums and piano. Okay, so this opening part establishes like the rhythm, which is what, like 7/8. I think this was in 7/8. Yes, it's in 7/8. Um, Also, it says 110 BPM, but it's actually at 220. I guess it's like double time. Um, and the bass is just playing one note. And a lot of this track is going to be like one note with then like pitch bends are going to be the big thing. So it has the little accent notes around it, but largely it's just playing a single note and then um, being sidechanged by the kick, which is also just playing every beat. To set up FL Studio for other time signatures, you can go, I think it's options, and if you open like general settings, you can go over to the project settings. It doesn't actually display on stream, but it's, yeah, options, project settings will take you to a thing where you can set time signatures, or you can, within a pattern, like if I just make a pattern, you can add uh, under, oh, this probably won't display either. Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad that it can't display any other windows. If you go into like that little arrow in the top left that's highlighting here, time markers, you can add a time signature change within a pattern. Um, which then I think you can also potentially, yeah, I think you can add time signature changes to the timeline as well, by doing the same like orange arrow up here. Um, Add time signature change. But for here, it's just the entire project's in 7/8. And the kick here is just playing every beat. I mean, it's the equivalent of 4 to the floor. It's just not 4 beats per measure. And then it just has a stuttered like extra note at the end there to reset each bar. And then really heavy side chaining between the kick and the bass. And the only other element here that barely is like audible is I have this stereoized sort of helicoptery effect, which is done. I think I have 3 different action strike patches set to heartbeat, which is sort of a thumpy. Oh, can't find it. There it is. It's really quiet. But this sound is sort of a like thumpy bass noise, and then I have them all pans differently. So it ends up with this like stereoized, again, like helicopter effect, and that just adds a little bit of stereo information to the opening, which is largely pretty centered for the most part. Other than that, the strings are, I think, pretty much all. Yeah, they're repeating the same thing as the bass line. They're just doing these sort of, I guess, octaved spiccato runs. So they're playing just the one note, but they're moving octaves to have a little bit more motion. So it's not just playing the same note each time. But realistically, like this is all just one note, right? It's just playing what, E or whatever, D. Oh, I thought I. Oh, all the patterns are in D. I pitched everything up to E because I realized that was a better route to mix in for the sub. But they're all just playing the same note. And then the main thing is there's a pitch bend like up in the very, very beginning, but the main thing is there's this pitch bend up. And it's an added bar. Opinion on the Team Fortress 2 bot crisis. I mean, it's frustrating that TF2 is less playable. I don't know. I haven't really been playing it recently, partly because of the bots. I don't know how much of an opinion you can really have, unless you're pro bot. Um, but this is basically like an added bar. So you have 4 bars, and then you have an extra bar during this pitch bend up. which is another thing. It's like being written in 7/8, which like skips a beat at the end of each bar. It's another element that I like in sort of actiony music to make it a little bit off kilter feeling because you have this extra bar that you don't expect there. Um, and that's again, I mean, it is playing one note. It's just being slowly pitched up, and that's all the elements are being pitched up together. The other like main element in here is where is it? Oh, there are the drums, which are what are the drums doing? I don't remember. Oh, they're it's the same thing as the kick. They're just playing every beat, right? No, they're not. Wait, that's not the same as the kick because I'm offset. Because this actually is. I'm used to like weird meters being weird to do, but this is actually in 7/8 because I convert it, which means they're not doing the same thing as the kick. Oh, because the kick is still playing. I'm dumb. Um, okay, so the drums are doing basically the same cinematic pattern I was talking about before. It's just in 7/8 now. So they're playing on dotted quarter notes. Um, General opinion about like TF2? I mean, I don't know. I'm not super kept up with TF2 really. I just occasionally still play it. Um, but yeah, so quarter like dotted quarter notes over quarter notes. If you have one thing playing like on every beat, and then you have another element playing um, in these sort of offset intervals, um, you just end up with, I guess, more interesting rhythmic stuff, which is why I do this so much. But other than that, I mean, it's just filling in all the 16th notes with higher elements that are stereoized, so they sound nice. Um, that's how I write a lot of drums. It's just like one main element and one side element, and then a whole bunch of stuff filling in all the rest of the spaces on whatever grid it's on. Um, but anyway, besides the drums, the other main element I was trying to find, oh, that's a sub, but that's just the bass. Where is, I didn't label things in this project. Bad idea, by the way, label your projects. Um, okay, the other thing is this piano, which is technically a piano. It's I do arrive at 7/8 different times of years. Oh, so 7/8 I decided on because I thought for like action music it skipping the beat, I guess, is the main thing. So when you have 7/8 or when you have um, like 15/16, I guess 3/4 doesn't work the same really because 3/4 has a completely different feeling. But like with 7/8, if you have 7/8 but you kind of treat it like 4/4 when you're playing eighth notes, having a skipped beat adds like this sort of jump forward that I think is like good for action music, where it's a little bit more. I guess it puts people a little bit more on edge. Um, a lot of different time signatures do have like other sort of different feelings, but specifically the ones that I like keep in mind are because it's associated with the waltz. 3/4 feels very like dance esque, like not dance like EDM, but like dance like ballroom dance or whatever. 4/4 is like pretty standard, but 7/8 I think it was like an action time signature most of the time because it has that skipped beat. Um, Yeah, I mean it's fine to ask other questions. I don't really have that much of an opinion about it though, because I'm not particularly like up to date on TF2 stuff. Um, yeah, but 7/8 is like a really good time signature to like that I default to for a lot of action stuff. Either that or 4/4. Um, but that's really all it comes down to. I don't. I'm not actually very good at counting, so a lot of other time signatures like it's hard for me to keep track of. I shouldn't say I'm not very good at counting. I'm not good at like following meter. I can count just fine. Um, but like yeah, it's just sort of a default action one. Um, okay, so this piano is. I'll turn off the effects. It is oh, why did turning oh right, okay. So if I turn off the effects, um, what's happening is it's this plugin called Noir, which has the particle engine, and I have it switched to be entirely playing in the particles mode, which means rather than actually playing like the notes I play on the keyboard, what it's doing is it's spreading out brushed piano strokes on the strings between notes in that chord within a couple octaves. It's like if I play a D minor chord, it's sort of going to arpeggiate, not really arpeggiate exactly, but like move around that chord with brushed strokes. And I have it playing these low octaves. So it's only playing one note, but it's doing that sort of spread out sound. But then besides that, I'm running it through. The main thing here is 3 instances of D Blue Glitch, which just applies random effects at different intervals. And so what happens when you run it through a bunch of glitch effects is you end up with this just sort of glitchy background noise, which is something I've done in a couple different tracks to fill up space. But here it's the piano that's doing that. And it's, again, it's just sort of like ear candy, basically. It fills up the background. And then there's, again, this is sort of like a transition bar, I guess. I use a lot of those in tracks in general. It's just, again, you want to space things out so they don't sound too rushed. You don't want everything to be back to back. And then this section is identical drums to the previous thing. It just only has those glitchy piano noises without any other elements, so it's just sort of a break. And then we have the one, I guess, thing with harmonic content in the entire track, which is the strings. Which again are, these will sound different, like between these and this, because they're offset by I guess a whole step, because I pitched everything up after bouncing it. But if we just look at the strings here, ooh, see, what's funny is like I don't actually know that much about like theory stuff. Like there are a lot of people, particularly, I mean, people that have had like a proper like musical education, that I can barely follow what they're talking about. Still, there's just like a really wide, I guess, spread of like musical knowledge. There's just a lot. It's a really deep pool of things. I guess with as with most topics in art. Um, Anyway, so this, okay, so this version will be in D, which is how I'm going to think about it. So realistically, this second chord is just an open 5 root note. There's an education class for music. Yeah, you can. There's a musical college. Like, I know people that are majoring in music. Um, I know people that have majored in music. Um, I mean, it's like art, right? You can major in like art history or painting or something. Yeah, there are colleges that specialize in music. There are also like colleges that just have music programs. I mean, I know my college has a music program. I'm not in it, but it does have one. Um, and like typically, most high schools have, well, maybe not most. A high school with like a fairly robust music program is going to have probably a theory course, like AP Music Theory or something. I mean, plus obviously there's typically like a band and an orchestra and stuff where you can do like be an instrumentalist. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of musical education. I think Berkeley College of Music is like the biggest one in America, at least the one that I hear about the most as far as colleges go. Um, anyway, so this second note is it's like just an open root note 5. It's kind of implying. It's guys is not really like it doesn't quite work as like a harmonic fifth, which I think is why I left it open because it sounded the best. But the root notes are a 4 5 6, which is going to be like a pretty common sort of epic progression, I guess, out of like sort of actiony music stuff. Um, Wait, yeah, yeah, that type of thing. It's a pretty common action-ish progression. and then it just goes to the one after each of those. But this is another time where it's almost like less useful to think of it in terms of chords so much as like voice leading. So you can just think of this as like this voice is sort of ascending up and then going back to the root, and everything will do something and then return to the root for these sections here. So it's sort of a call and response, some sort of motion and then a root, some sort of motion, and then like root. So that one does that. This one is outlining other like chordal elements. So it's 4, and then it goes to the open 5. And then this is also, again, I guess it's implying like a 4 chord in inversion. So I guess, yeah, it's 4, 5, 4, and then 1 if you really want to think about it in terms of chords. But again, I think it's easier to think of it in terms of voicing. So you have this descending voice, this ascending voice, which are sort of contrasting each other, right? It's contrary motion. And then they go to the 1. This one is much more, I think, chordally sounded out to me. This feels more like... Yeah, no, I really didn't like I mean, my parents made me take orchestra for 4 years or whatever, but I avoided music stuff too. But then I realized, I guess senior year of high school, I took a music theory course because I'd realized that I actually liked music production and like composition and stuff. But I had pretty vehemently avoided musical things before that. This one is then, I guess it's implying like a 3. And then like a suspended... I guess suspended? Yeah, like a... yeah, 3 sus 2. And then... Oh, but that's inverted too, so it's like not... I don't know. I can't describe this... I don't exactly know how to describe this harmonically, because it's over the... Like, if this was implying a 3 chord, then this is over the 3, but it also has this. So I guess it's like a 3 add... not... Like, what even is... That's 9, I guess? Like 3... No, because it's not... I don't know. I don't know. But I guess, yeah, an easier way to think about it is just, like, voicing-wise, this top line is doing roughly the same thing, just down 1. This is another one of those things where I think, like, this is largely written by ear. Again, it's less informed writing, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, you can write by ear, like, most of the time. Anyway. I guess the important thing, the way that I would think about these, is that there's sort of a progression. Like if you think about just a melodic line, you have this descent down, and then this descent down, and then this descent down. They're all like offset by 1, so it's sort of a progression downwards. And then it goes back up to do this root. I think that's the best, like the most useful way to think about it. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. And this is just like a sitting on the 5 to reset type of thing. And then it just has, I mean, it repeats and it has the riser and then this next section. This track is mostly 1 note. So this is just going to have, I guess, just single bass notes. And then single bass notes plus this cello that fades in. And the cello has I think it's being. Oh, I don't know if it is here. I think it is here though. Um, I wish I'd labeled things in this track. There we go. It's being run through a guitar amp, which is fun. Um, So it just sort of to add like rhythmic stuff. You have the cello is almost. I mean, it's not really a rhythmic instrument, but it's being used as a sort of rhythmic underpinning, and because it's that sort of distorted, crunchy sound through the guitar amp, I think it works pretty well. And then the drums are doing the same thing pretty much. They just don't have. Oh, they're quieter. Um, that's really the only difference. And then it's just layering on other things. I mean, it's all playing the one note pretty much. I mean, it moves up at the end of each measure to the flat two, but it's like mostly just playing the one note. And then at the very, very end, it goes down, which is again just the principle of if you use the root and then the half step above and below it, it sounds tense, but you're basically just filling it in with sound design. So it's drums. There's another bass under here, which I think was like a weird plugin that I was trying at the time, if I remember correctly. Unless it's just a serum patch. I thought it was a no, it might just be a serum patch. Yeah, it's less interesting than I thought. Yeah, it's just a serum patch with delay on it. I thought at one point one of these tracks I had a whole bunch of basses that I was trying with. I think it was called Synthmaster. It was a different plugin, but this is just a I mean, it's a saw wave with a filter on it. That's about it. As with many sounds, it's just a saw wave with some processing. That's really the whole section. I mean, it has the piano like layered under it, but it's just a bunch of one note. Basically, what it comes down to is just filling it in with interesting like sounds, ear candy, and then the section repeats. That's really the whole track because it was meant to be like action music, and so I figured like this is the main section. Um, Realistically, it would be somewhat repeating, so I didn't like write much more than that. I think that's it. Um, and that might be like I guess all I go over for today, unless there's like a specific other track that anyone's particularly interested in. I have a whole bunch of other tracks like that I could go over at any other point, um, but yeah, it's like fun to talk about work, so I'm happy to like break things down. Um, though obviously, like the newer things have more stuff for me to talk about, um, just in terms of like I guess developing as a producer, but also they're just like more. They tend to be longer and have more elements. All right, well, I'll just end it then, and I'll probably, I mean, maybe I'll do something like this again sometime, or I might do more production stuff because that's, I suppose, an easy filler thing to do. But yeah, thank you for tuning in.